Hallo? Oh.
Jetzt kann man nicht hören.
Oh. Maybe this Polycom system shut itself down in the meantime. I don't know. You still hear us?
Yep.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, yeah, we know that the quality is not pitch perfect. There is a bit of an echo we realized when listening to the recording of the previous one. I'm awfully sorry for the trouble that we had here. Seemingly something did not work exactly right with the system.
Okay, I will try it for a second time. First of all, a warm welcome to everybody to our webinar about DocYard and how to integrate established tools and applications on this production platform. But before we start, please let me mention some organizational topics. If you have any questions, please write it down in your box, so we will answer it immediately, and if we are out of time, we will send you directly after the webinar our answer via email. So at least if you leave the webinar after we have discussed all, please be so kind and fill out our feedback formula. It would be much helpful for us to improve our webinars constantly for the future. Okay, what is DocYard and how do we come to the special topic of integration of established tools? DocYard is an integration platform for all process steps in a scan service bureau. Every single task will be converted to a process step, which is a part of an automatically running workflow. We integrate digital and analog tasks like paper handling and generate protocol information about this. All activities are centrally managed, and so you will detect immediately if there are differences between plan versus actuals. And in the end, your level of automation will increase significantly. But on the other hand, where are we today in the most of all scan service bureaus? You will find a lot of single applications which are in use. Each application fits for a single purpose, mostly perfect, but the level of integration between all these different tools is very low, or at least completely lacking. If there are interfaces between two tools, we have only a one-to-one relation, and all these interfaces are proprietary and not in a standard way established and developed. So in the end, if there is a new requirement, this will lead to additional tools, and this will in the end multiply the number of interfaces. So your system will become more and more complex and cannot be managed reasonably. How can we change this with DocYard? DocYard follows a new strategy, and it is a production software for scan service providers and an integration platform to integrate all process steps. That means beginning from stock reset, coming to the paper handling, and manual preparing paper for the scan process, and so on, up to the end, how to deliver the results to your customer. Well, every process step will be, which is covered by DocYard, will be centrally managed and monitored, and all DocYard modules generate reporting information which are centrally collected and can be centrally analyzed. So you have total control and the overview about your production by using simple graphical tools. Well, this is quite clear if there are standard DocYard modules that they follow this strategy and will use the standard protocol mechanism of DocYard. But how can you handle self-deployed tools or third-party software? Well, DocYard offers an SDK, also called Module API. By using this, you can integrate established tools and applications. This Module API is easy to use using standard Microsoft tools, for example C#, but not only, Visual Studio, Microsoft.NET technologies, and so on. The Module API guarantees standard interfaces between all modules, and we provide functions for reporting. So all components and tools which are integrated via the Module API feature standard interfaces, generate reporting information, and are centrally managed and monitored as if they are native DocYard modules. And how we will do this in practice, Armin will show you with a short example and a few explanations before.
Okay, thank you very much for this great introduction. You covered quite a few points already. Still, some things I need to mention. Be assured that we will get back to all of the points here in the software demonstration. So whenever there is something you do not understand directly here, quite some of the features of a module are maybe a bit better explained when we take a look at the DocYard cockpit and a look at the source code for a module, which we will do in a minute. Some basic characteristics of DocYard modules. The modules are really the functional building blocks. So to speak, we do have an infrastructure in DocYard, but it's more like the basic plant of a factory, the building, the power supplies, but it's not the actual machinery. The machinery, the engines that actually do something, that get the work done, those are the modules. And the way we created those modules, each one of them is a self-contained entity which plugs into the overall system but has very little knowledge of the general process. It just doesn't have to have that knowledge, and we think that that is a benefit for the developers for modules. And the module API we are talking about serves for creating those modules. So it's not a general DocYard API for many tasks, but it's the API for creating your own modules. And something that's worth mentioning, this is also the basis for all module development. So all the modules that Zuratech develop and ship with the standard DocYard release are also created using this API. There are no backdoors, cheat codes, and no special black magic that we are apply for our own modules. Some other facts. A module is a .NET class. We're talking about a .NET interface here, and each module is implemented in the shape of a class. And all modules are, in a perfect object-oriented fashion, derived from a common base class, which is named module base. So implementing your own module means that you derive from module base, or actually mostly from some intermediate class, which I have left out here for brevity, and implement such a derived class, override a few methods, and there you are with your own module. Things you need to do, things you need to implement and override when creating a module. You can create input and output channels. Those are the means of receiving data that is consumed by the module and passing on data which is created by the module. So for example, as we will see soon, there is you can have a module which takes one image file, does something to the image file, and then creates a result and passes it along. I hear that we have a low sound quality. I really apologize, but at present we do have this sound system that we have, and so there is little I fear I can do about this. Of course, we will send the recording to everyone later, or we will send the link to the recording because the recording is not so small later on. And also, of course, we will make the presentation available. For now, I will just continue with the presentation here and hope that at least some of the people can understand me okay. So what do you need to do in terms of implementing your own class and overriding the base class? Well, you need to define these input and output channels. There can be more than one input and there can be more than one output, so you can merge and branch in the workflow. You need at least one major processing function. That's really the function that is called whenever your input is available. You can then do whatever processing you require and provide the output, which is then passed along automatically. You can have configuration parameters, which are then shown in the DocYard cockpit to configure the module, and you can have additional functions, for example, for initializing and for finalizing. So if there is some kind of infrastructure, some external engine, for example, which you have to start when the module starts, that of course is possible and you can do that. Many of the other things are handled by the DocYard infrastructure. So the infrastructure loads all the required .NET assemblies for a module. It provides the setup at runtime. It calls these initialization routines and everything. And it makes sure that the module connections as specified in a DocYard workflow are established. So the module does not have to handle any of that by itself, but it can really assume that the infrastructure is there, that it's hooked up and plugged in by the time the processing routine is called. The same for passing the object, and of course you get support for error handling, reporting, and logging. So there are parts of the framework where you can simply post a log message and the system will deal with it, will insert it in the log, will trace it in the database, will notify the user, and whatever. We mentioned it several times. It's a .NET API, so most of DocYard is written directly in .NET. And so the major means of creating a module are, of course, C# and Visual Basic .NET. But of course, there is this whole plethora of languages, high-level languages, for which .NET compilers are available, such as J#, for example, and many other .NET varieties. I didn't list them all here. Of course, there is this C++ CLI flavor of C++, that's Microsoft managed code version of C++. Some people use that. And of course, you have a direct interconnection from .NET to COM. So if you have programmers who are really familiar with COM and like to write COM interfaces, that would also be a means of implementing a DocYard module. Concerning the methods of integration, we are of course talking mostly about integrating existing software, existing SDKs or services into DocYard, less than really implementing some functionality from scratch. But of course you could do that. If you have something very simple, for example, DocYard ships with a sample where simply an image is, I think the contrast is changed or it's turned to black and white, and that is of course a simple thing. You can simply loop over the pixels of the image, change the value, and write out the result. That is something that's done in a few lines of code in any programming language, and therefore it's straightforward to implement it directly in .NET. But usually you want to do evolve more complicated things, and you want to tie to libraries where you don't even have the source code, and that's where you usually apply the means of connecting .NET to native code via .NET wrappers, pinvoke, or if the code has COM interfaces, you can again make use of the COM interfaces. And this is really also the way in which we tied our existing, say, JPEG 2000 and PDF SDKs into DocYard. We didn't write any new code here, but simply wrote this connection layer. And in a similar fashion, you can communicate with services such as Windows services or web services. You can start external applications, basically any arbitrary process, as we will see in a second. And you can, of course, execute scripts and do things within such scripts. And the clue here is that these things can be done in a synchronous manner. So you can start an application, wait for it to finish, and then continue the processing within DocYard. Okay, let's switch to a quick demonstration. I need to connect to a different machine here. 1 second. That's great. We do really have technical problems here. At least we're connected to the right machine now. So I'm starting the DocYard cockpit now. Sorry for the brief delay again. And of course, we do have rather complicated workflows, such as, say, this one here. But for this occasion, we'll choose a rather simple workflow. So I'm sorry if we don't get into the many details of all these different modules here, but you can basically see the structure. Every one of these icons represents a module. These dots left and right of the modules are the inputs and outputs, and of course you also have configuration parameters for the modules down here. For this demonstration, we'll use something very, very simple. I just wanted to show you the more complex thing, not to fool you into believing that this is about all there is to DocYard. Of course, there is more than such a simple workflow where basically files, images are read from this folder, sent to this module here, which actually starts Ortmann displaying them, and finally they are deposited here in this output folder. This is, of course, not very evolved, but I hope it suffices to demonstrate what we are talking about here. Let me just simply start it. And if we don't run into problems again, we do see Ortmann starting up and showing the images that were read in the system. okay, there's only a handful of images. Some of them are maybe known because we tend to use them in every other demonstration, but that's about it here. And what you see here is that this module, which I specifically created for this demonstration, it just simply has the path to OrtmanView down here, and inside the module, the call is launched that starts OrtmanView and passes the input data that is being received to OrtmanView. And just to show you how that is accomplished, let me open up Visual Studio here. And here you see the source code of this external process module. And just to make sure that you are not frightened and quit the demonstration immediately, you can see here it's about 200 lines of source code. That's about all there is, and it takes care of everything about this module, starting with a name, a description, and a version, then specifying the input and output channels, because as you saw, the module has one input channel and one output channel. They are of the most basic DocYard type, so there are no real requirements as to what types of modules, what types of data this module accepts. There is a type system for things such as images and documents, and of course other types such as OCR data or PDF data or XML or other things. I won't go into too much detail here, but there is a real object-oriented type system which makes it easy to select the proper types for your module. We then come to the definition of these two configuration parameters. The second one merely decides whether there is an output file name created and also passed along to the command. If that's set to false, the command is simply called on the input parameters, as we just saw in the example. And then we already come to the initialization routine. This one is mostly present here because it does a bit of checking whether the command that was specified may be empty or whether the file it refers to cannot be found. So this is already a bit of full development here. If you did not care and simply were okay with running into an exception here, you would not need so much code, but we try to make it a little nicer. And then here, the module creates temporary file names for an input and an output file. And this is the interesting bit where the actual process is created with the command pass, and the input and output files are passed along as arguments. Then some more stuff, some more error handling happens, and as you see, at any point you have a chance to post an error, post a log message or an error message. So you have mere log messages, but you have also error messages, which are then tracked by the system, and certain of these messages are also directly displayed to the user. And finally, after some more error handling and file closing, you also can increase the counter of objects processed, and in this module we simply count the files that we're processing. And that's about all there is to it. So you have to define the bare necessities, input channels, output channels, and configuration variables, and you have to implement this process data object routine. But that is really all there is. You don't have to create any ini files. You don't have to create any supplementary classes. You can directly link in any .NET assemblies or DLLs you may require. Okay, let's get back to the DocYard cockpit. If we take a closer look here, we actually see that files were being counted as imported, but they were not really processed and exported. And that is basically due to the fact that that IrfanView, in the way I just called it, simply calling IrfanView and passing the file name, does not prompt it to create any output file. So there is actually a little more complicated syntax if you really want to use IrfanView in batch processing. And to accommodate for that fact, it's straightforward to really write a command line in a script, such as this one. So again, this would start IrfanView. It would hand over the input file. It would perform some commands. In this case, it would crop every image to 1,000 by 1,000 pixels, and it would then write the result to this output file. And of course, you could also do that directly in the context of the module, but the module in this case would become more and more specific and less general. So I basically decided at this point I would want to do more in the script and less in the module, and then simply call the script from the module, pass both the input and output file, and see what happens then. And you see this, I hope you did see it, it was pretty fast. This really truly writes 6 output files, and you no longer see the IrfanView window because it directly operates in batch mode. And here we now have the script outputs. Let's check the date. It is from just a second ago, and this one was not really modified because it's smaller than 1,000 by 1,000 pixels anyway. But you see here, this one was clearly cropped, as were the other ones. Of course, this is an example bordering on the ridiculous, but it's merely here to illustrate the overall concept. So that's, to sum it up, there is really just a few dozen lines of code that you have to write, and you can basically start any given piece of software on your machine. You decide over the level of integration, of how tightly to tie in the existing bit of software. Of course, if, for example, an SDK allows programmatic passing on of images, you can use that. You don't have to save things in intermediate files. You can pass them along in memory, and by that you have a very efficient means of integrating existing software into DocYard and benefiting from the overall manageability, because suddenly your existing tool becomes one of the modular building blocks and can pretty much be just inserted here in this drag and drop fashion. Helmut, did I miss anything? Did I leave any important points without mentioning?
I think not, but what you can show in addition is if you change the batch file, for example, converting to grayscale.
Oh yeah,
maybe useful to show.
You like that from the previous webinar. Okay, I think it's
because I'm so old, the world is not so colorful anymore.
And you're not wearing your glasses anyway. Okay, but yeah. Okay, now we have changed the script and can launch this thing again here. It will automatically. No, that was the wrong one. I'm sorry. This is really a day where everything that can go amiss does go wrong. So that's the one with the script. Okay, and this is the output folder, and now you see
it's in grayscale.
Everything is in grayscale. Here you recall that the images were colored. Those ones don't really look different because they were grayscale in the first place. But this one's also reduced, faded to gray.
Okay, I think it was 1 or 2 questions.
Let's check. Okay, the question concerning documentation and training. Yes, there is documentation for the module API. So we do have a starter's tutorial that outlines how to create a module where basically everything that I've now just mentioned is explained in quite some detail. And of course, this will also be expanded upon. There is, for the object model, for the types that you can pass along between modules, as well as for the module-based classes, there is a Microsoft-style online documentation with cross-references available. Let's see whether I can quickly show that. I can show it, but it's not quick. Anyway, Luratech, DocYard. DocYard module API reference. So you do have this kind of hyperlinked online help where all sorts of classes and their methods are really thoroughly explained. Like this. You're probably familiar with that look if you have been using .NET and Visual Studio. So we supply that kind of documentation as well. And we also regularly provide training for the DocYard module API. So if you acquire that and want to use it, it usually comes with a few days of training for your developers, except if you don't want to.
Well, and let me notice in addition that there is also a possibility to visit the yearly update training to be familiar with new versions of DocYard. So your experts are always cutting the edge and can write useful new modules.
Yeah, and benefit from new developments, as of course DocYard is our new flagship product, and we will of course continue to extend and improve it, write new modules and everything. Okay, we do have a second question as for interactive modules. I purposely left that topic out a bit here because it's really, it's not really complicated, but it comes with a few additional facts. So there is a base class which also derives from the standard module-based class, but it's prepared for interactive modules. And we do ship DocYard with a few samples how to implement such interactive modules. So there is support for that as well. And so you don't have to use something like IrfanView or ImageMagick and start that up to manipulate your data interactively. But it's probably enough stuff for a webinar of its own as to what is involved in creating interactive modules. For those of you who know it, who are familiar with it, we have meanwhile implemented the form validator that used to ship with PDF compressor as a module for DocYard, and we do have customers who are using several dozen of these form validators in parallel to work on their automatically recognized form data. Okay, a few further details. Some of that were mentioned already. Of course, you can provide a module with a clear text name. You can provide it with a unique identifier. You can version the modules, and the system will automatically check for version conflicts. You can, of course, create your own nice icon. You are not stuck with a default icon that DocYard provides. And you can, that's been localized already here, you can translate the strings that are displayed for a module and everything in various languages. And you can use standard .NET resources to show whatever is appropriate in on a given Windows system.
Okay.
I see no further questions here. Are there any more? Did we leave anything out? If something comes to mind later on after we've finished the presentation, don't hesitate to contact us. We will, of course, also stand by to answer all questions pertaining to DocYard and to the module API.
Well, looks like we can finish. No other question. Okay. Thank you very much for your kind attention and for the time you spent it to know more about our new flagship DocYard. I wish you a pleasant afternoon and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you and bye-bye.
Yes, thank you very much, and hope to, well, not see you, but to have you as our guest soon again in another webinar. Goodbye.
Bye.